What's up, people? Welcome to another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best new metal podcast by two guys who are really there. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horsecow, with my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how is it going?
Great. Feeling great.
Good. Good. We're feeling great. We're drinking beers. We're having a party. So what are we talking about this week? So this week, we're going to talk about what I would argue, the big music movement to come right immediately after new metal, which is the new wave of American heavy metal. So Tim, new metals, this stuff starts to rise up, say 2002, 2003. It becomes completely the thing by 2005. But when would you pinpoint when would you pinpoint that this started to bubble under the surface of, this is going to be big?
That's a hard question because I kind of feel like you see the rise of this with Ozfest when Ozfest changes. So what's that, 2003, 4? You go from all the new bands, and then you have, it was what, Kill Switch.
Yep.
You would have Shadows Fall, Lamb of God, Chimera.
Yep.
All them bands were getting hit on Earth. I mean, yeah. Especially in like Massachusetts area, shit like that. It got huge. But I think all them bands around when they started putting out their record labels, like, or when their records, I mean, on like the bigger labels, I think is when this starts to, all right, new metal's out, new wave in. Because I mean, what, As I Like Dying was fucking huge.
Yes. And that was the band that I think really made me realize, hey, this is going to be big. This is going to be a thing. So some of these bands that got lumped into that, I would say the new wave of American heavy metal, that they came out of the hardcore scene. They came out of stuff that was adjacent to new metal.
Oh, yeah.
So for example, if we use Ozfest as the arbiter, as the indicator of what was big culturally, when you go back to Ozfest 2000, and I would argue 2003. 2003 would be the year that I think we started to see peaks of this. So when you look at the second stage, 2003, Shadows Fall, right? Kill Switch Engage. You still have new metal, right? You still got Nothing Face. You still got Unloco. You use Depswa. You have Sworn Enemy, who is basically a metal hardcore crossover band. You have Chimera, right, in 2003. And then you've got stuff like Endo and E-Town Concrete and whatnot. I think that was when the world started to turn. And I think I think if I'm going to do like the big three of the new wave of American heavy metal, it's probably Kill Switch, Shadows Fall, Lamb of God.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Tim. Speaking of Lamb of God as an aside, are they the OG band that basically patented the technique of a metal band coming out of the hardcore scene?
You mean like a band that didn't sound hardcore but was in the hardcore scene?
They played with all hardcore bands and they used that to their advantage to really grow. I mean, they played Hellfest. They used the being around hardcore bands to kind of bootstrap themselves into popularity. And I'm not talking shit because I think that's a great idea, but you look at some of the slam stuff, some of the metal stuff that's coming out today, which truthfully is hardcore kids playing metal, which maybe back in the old days is metal guys playing hardcore. But you look at stuff like Stuffed on Sight, look at stuff like Sanguisuga Bong, 200 Stab Wounds, Undeath. Those guys have toured with they've toured with hardcore bands, they've toured with metal bands. I wouldn't say it's a built-in audience, but there's adjacent enough of a sound that I think it actually works.
Yeah, well, I guess you could also say that's the new wave right now. All them bands that you just mentioned, that's like the new wave of American heavy metal right now.
Agree.
But to your point though, I think Lamb of God is a perfect band for that. I mean, you had like bands like Unearth, but they had the mosh parts and stuff. But that was I know me and you disagree on this on Stings, but like that's a straight up just metal record with mosh parts. It's got all the riffing and all that shit, but they came out of the hardcore scene. You also got to remember it's hardcore kids that are playing in these bands. So
this is true. See, when I think of Stings of Consciousness, I think of more of a metallic hardcore band, and this is where genres get really fucking weird, and this is where they overlap to the point where I'm sure if we were really drunk right now, we could spend an hour just on that topic of arguing, right? Arguing which one. I don't know. But I do think there are bands, and I honestly think, not to say that that's a cheat code, but why wouldn't you do that? Like,
No,
why
no,
wouldn't you? I mean,
absolutely.
you and I, we've talked ad nauseum about mixed bills and how cool mixed bills are to have a bunch of bands that do different stuff together. If I'm 200 stab wounds, I want to go out with a fucking Jesus piece. I want to go out with
Yeah,
terror,
definitely.
right? I mean,
No, no, absolutely. I mean, like when we talk about Shadows Fall, like that, them records, well, the first record was more of like on the death metal side, but then when War Within and all them records come out, like that's a straight heavy metal stuff. But like, you also got to remember, it was members of Overcast and all that kind of
right.
stuff. So you had all that stuff. So I mean, it all stems from something else. But I really think that at the same time, I think back to our episode we just put out about the new metal kill grunge. I kind of think this is the scene right here. Well, I mean, we could say metalcore, but this is the scene right here that kills that. I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The rise of this sound, and we'll talk about butt rock in a minute.
Yeah,
This is the sound that comes out of nowhere. Not comes out of nowhere, but was a natural extension. It was less, and I don't like to use this term, but I think it fits, less fratty than new metal, right? It was less
yeah.
abrasive. I hate my parents, and I'm joking, but I was, again, I was there and thoroughly involved. I still
It's
think
not
when,
Five Finger Death Punch bullshit.
yes, yes, and I also think the big change with the new wave of American heavy metal is the musicality of those bands. Like, go back and listen to Alive or Just Breathing,
Amazing record. Yeah.
Art of Balance,
Yep.
Determination,
Oh yeah.
As the Palaces Burn. There's
Oh
just those
yeah.
four, and then add in
Possibility of Reason.
yes, Impossibility Reason. All monster albums with bands that actually demonstrated they can legit play their instruments. No offense to the gimmicky new metal stuff, right? Because there was some good new metal, but this is shifting towards true musicality, which I thought was
Yeah.
bonkers.
I also think that is back when you were getting the best productions on records as well. There was something about
Yes.
the early 2000s where just the records just sounded fucking huge, man. Like Impossibility of Reason sounds incredibly good. You know, Determination sounds great. Art of Balance is a little tinny for me, but like the War Within, that
Really?
record sounds incredible, dude.
I see. I think Art of Balance is the better sounding of the two,
Really?
and of One Blood, I will say that it's not great, but there are some tracks. There are
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah,
tracks
yeah,
that out, but Art
definitely.
of Balance, I think, is where they really come into their own.
Well, wasn't Of One Blood Phil Labonte? Or
I
no,
don't
no, he
think
was
so.
no, he was on the EP before that.
Yes, yes.
But there's another huge band. All That Remains. They were fucking huge.
Yeah, I mean, we have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, they were one of those bands that started, and I mean, like Killswitch, they keep going. So let me ask you this, Tim, when we talk about the new wave of American heavy metal, when it comes to Killswitch, Team Jesse or Team Howard, which one?
Oh, Jesse, 100%.
Yeah, no offense to Howard, love to have him on the
Oh
show.
no, no, yeah, not at
But
all.
that the Alive or Just Breathing is a monster album, and I will say that Jesse's comeback album was amazing.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, no gripes on Howard. Amazing singer. I just think that Jesse had more of that raw power for that band,
Yeah,
and or Howard to me is more of like an operatic singer, if that makes sense. Like he's very
yeah,
clean,
yeah.
where
Go back and
Jesse is
listen to
very throaty, if that makes sense to
it
people
does,
listening.
it does, because if you go back and listen to Blood Has Been Shed,
Yeah,
right? Go back to listen to Novella of Uriel, novella. What is it? Novella of Uriel,
yeah, I
I
think
think.
so.
Howard can actually hit those big notes,
Yeah,
which
he's
is
an operatic
yeah,
singer,
which is
and
which
he's
is
great.
wild.
Yeah, I mean, even like his newer bands, I forget what that band's called that he's doing. The really good stuff with the dude from Bleeding Through, but like he's just more, I he's more fit for a band that has a really slick production, whereas Killswitch has that more raw, like Adam D production thing going on, and Jesse just fits better. If you listen to Jesse's other bands, like you could just tell that dude is That dude's a fucking talent, man.
Yes, yes. So
We're
let's.
forgetting one thing.
Mhm.
Who coined the term new wave of American heavy metal?
I forget.
It was Mark from Chimera.
Was it?
Yeah.
But I mean,
So
that's not wrong. I mean, he's
no.
not wrong because that stuff came out of nowhere, and it didn't come out of nowhere, but it rose up to the fact that that's kind of that is, I think, to your point, that put the nail in the new metal coffin was
Yeah.
those bands. And you mentioned them early on. We should go back and give them their due. People don't realize that people that weren't around. As I Lay Dying was a monster band.
Yeah.
They were a monster band, and you had all this new wave of American heavy metal stuff blowing up. As I Lay Dying was huge. Unearth, right? Because Things of
Huge.
Conscience, it's metallic hardcore. Oncoming Storm is a straight up metal album,
That's
right?
an incredible fucking record too.
The drumming on that, Mike Justine. I would love to get him on the show, but I'm pretty sure I would punish him and just ask an hour of backstabbers and questions.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
But that album was a monster and cemented them. The tour, I think you and I saw the same tour. We talked about it before. It was Killswitch, Shadows Fall. Was it Killswitch, Shadows Fall, Lamb of God with Unearth opening?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Again, I mean, and that was at the Electro Factory. It was huge. But let's talk about Ozfest, right? So 2004, you have a little bit of new metal, right? You have OTEP is still on the tour. Devil Driver is a metal band that has Dez in it, so it's always going to have that new metal bleed over.
Yeah.
But then you had Lamb of God, you had Bleeding Through, you had Unearth, God Forbid, Darkest Hour, right? Sneaky, amazing band.
Yep.
Sneaky, amazing band that I don't think ever gets the credit they deserve. You have Throwdown coming out of their hardcore, going into their, I hate to say Pantera ripoff, but by the time they get to Vendetta, they're basically a Pantera clone.
Yeah, it's a Pantera ripoff. I don't care what anyone says. The band would probably even say that.
Hatebreed, like this is in their metallic phase. This is coming out of Rise of Brutality. This is going into the next set of albums. Good stuff, but the new metal is done by that point. I mean, I'm looking at 2005. There is no new metal on this except for, Mudvayne, Slipknot played 2 days, Drowning Pool played 1 day, and that was it. It Dies Today, Soilwork, As I Lay Dying, Mastodon, Trivium, The Haunted, Arch Enemy, Black Dahlia Murder. Right.
Well, the 2005, I guess you could say, is where you see the At the Gates thing come in, where everybody wanted to be at the gates with Mosh.
Yep.
So that's where you get, because you go from the new wave, and then, but you kind of, if you think about it, you can kind of attribute the new wave to that At the Gate sound, because everybody was doing that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody doing it. I mean, and then you had In Flames and Soilwork go the route of the newer sound. So I mean, it all connects. Because after like Colony, they do Reroute to Remain, which I think is their best record.
Seconded, yeah.
I don't care what anyone says, that's their best record.
It is.
But yeah, and then Soilwork, I think, put out Stabbing the Drama or something. I think it was called. And it was like the same. Them two bands started the same and went the same route. It was super weird.
What's your favorite Soilwork album, Tim?
Ooh, man. That is a fucking good question, dude. I don't know, dude.
I'm partial to Figure Number 5.
Well, Figure's good, but man, that's so hard because they're such. Their record they put out a couple years ago was incredible. I just forget what it was called, Verkenlighten or something.
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, let's go. Let me think about that because I love Soilwork. I love all their shit, man. That their second record is a fucking masterpiece. I forget what it's called, but that might be my favorite. I just forget what it's called at this moment. I could think of the songs in my head.
So speaking of the At the Gates sound, one of those bands that I still listen to this album way more than I should really. It should probably show up on Last FM because I listened to it enough. One Kill Wonder by The Haunted.
Oh yeah,
that lead off song. God Puppet is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's a great record. I think Made Me Do It's a great record as well.
Yes. I prefer One Kid Wonder.
Yeah, I do as well. That's a great
Do
record.
you
Yeah.
remember? Do you remember Marco from that band? The original, his original band, Face Down, the Twisted Rule of Wicked. Do you remember that?
No, I thought he was an arch enemy too.
He might have been. But this is an album I picked up. I think it was on the back of like Rip magazine or one of those heavy metal magazines, and I was like, "Huh, that sounds kind of interesting." And I mean, they did the one album, and I think they went a whole bunch of nowhere, and then he ended up in the Haunted with the At the Gates guys. But what an amazing album!
Yeah, because another thing we got to talk about, even though it's new wave of American, you got to also remember the wave of European bands that were coming around too, like
Yes,
Cybreed.
yep,
Arch
yep.
Enemy got huge back then. At the Gates wasn't there. They came back 10 years later, but like there were so many big European bands.
Uh, so speaking of the big European bands, we also should probably talk about some of the big European producers from that
Oh,
time. So
oh,
think about the two guys who did they did the Poison the Well album, or when you talk about In Flames, you talk about Soilwork. Daniel Bergstrand, right?
yeah,
He did
Jens,
Dark
yeah.
Funeral. He did Behemoth. He did Kolos from Meshuggah. I mean, going back even further, In Flames. He did A Route to Remain. He did City. He did Chaosphere. He did Darkane. He did Devin Townsend's Ocean Machine. So
Mm.
that was another thing driving the sound forward. We're talking about the new wave of American heavy metal. It really should have just been I mean, if we want to retroactively retitle it, Tim, it really should be the rise of metallic, I mean, metal core, or I don't know. I
No,
don't know.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and you're 100% correct about the producers back then because they're a lot of people don't put that into perspective, like who produced a record. And that's a good call by you because to me, like you got to sit there and think like, yo, who like a lot when people do it nowadays where they listen to a record and they're like, yo, who mixed this or who produced this, and then you go and find amazing other records that same producer did. I think a lot of people didn't do that back then, but nowadays you do. That's why producing is so big right now. Like there's
Right.
so many classes you can take and all that shit because it's huge, dude. And like, the onset of home recording is huge, and that's why you're never gonna get these trends again because all this shit is so easy to do. It's just every trend is hitting it once if you think about it.
Yes. Yes.
You got new metal come back, metallic hardcore came back, all that shit. It's all hitting it once because it's so easily done now. There's producers that do this shit in their basements and they put out monster fucking records. Like it
Uh,
wasn't like that back then.
yeah. I mean, shout out. We got to give him a shout out. Hunter Young,
Yeah.
right? It Snuffed on Side album just came out, and that's a fucking monster. The Psycho Frame. Monster, the new mood ring stuff that he's touched on, the Iris.exe songs. A good producer who understands the sound you're going for
Yeah.
can do amazing shit for you. So I just pulled up, we were talking about producers. This guy isn't a new wave of American heavy metal guy, but Dave Sardi,
Oh yeah.
right? Dave Sardi, completely forgotten, Bark Market. But then he goes and does Slayer. He does the Chili Peppers. He does Orange Nine. He does Helmet's Aftertaste. He does Water and Solutions. He does the mixing for System of a Down, self-titled. He does VOD's Imprint, which I still think we need to deep dive that album someday. What a fucking monster
Let's
album!
do it.
But these are all guys that, to your point about producers, the right producer that understands your sound can take it from here and just send it right through the fucking ceiling. And
Yeah.
that's not to shit on the guys who like the one man bands, the guys who self-produce their own stuff, because they're all talented in their own right. But back then, when labels were king and produce, like if you're going to spend money on anything, you spent your money on a producer and you spend it on a video,
Yeah, yeah,
which is kind
yeah.
of weird to say out loud if you think about it.
No, it is. But I think right now, especially if you don't have any video content, you're not getting anywhere.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a necessary evil. I mean, we do our video on this show, and it's I mean, I could do with being more of a schlub late on a Saturday night, but I made sure my shirt's quasi ironed and it's not. Shout out to Gary from Memridge. There's not all like cat hair on it and shit. Tim's rocking what's it called, a Colo fan album, Burning Love.
Yeah, this is a J shirt. Yeah.
I wish he'd bring that back and move on from sect, but
So
whatever.
let's talk about the producers of this new wave thing. So you had Machine, who was great.
Right.
Jason Sukoff, who is one. If you ever seen the Chimera Resurrection DVD, he's on there. He's the guy that's in the wheelchair that produces. That dude's fucking great.
Did a
I mean,
bunch of stiff stuff back then, Tim, didn't he? He
a
did.
shitload of stuff, man.
What
Probably,
was his band? Capernaum. That was it.
he
Yes.
was in. I think he did some of the first Black Dahlia Murder records, Carnifex, shit like that, maybe.
Man, look at this. He did Kanai in 2005. He
Oh,
did Trivium in 2005. He did Neuraxis. He
oh,
did.
dude, not to cut you off, Trivium, huge band in that movement right there.
Yes, yes. And I I'm not a fan. I'm just gonna say it. I would love to have Matt Heafy on or any of the guys in the band. It's just not my thing, like the fretboardy kind of stuff. But to your point, huge band. So he did in 2005 Trivium, Kanai, Neuraxis, God Forbid, and that Roadrunner United.
Ooh, I love
And then
that.
the next year he does If Hope Dies, The Autumn Offering, Trivium again, Chimera, Devil Driver, Black Dahlia Murders Nocturnal, which is probably one of their biggest albums. All That Remains, The Autumn Offering. Man, I
Yeah.
remember them.
Ohio band, yeah.
He did Beauty and the Breakdown by Bury Your Dead. So they're an
Mm.
interesting band, right? Because if you think about it, they were a mosh short band, first album.
Yeah.
Cover Your Tracks is a total mosh anthem album. Another one we need to deep dive. We got to, you know who we should call for that one? Matt from Boundaries, because he was a big Bury Your Dead fan.
Let's do it.
So that, but then they do Beauty and the Breakdown, which was okay for me. It wasn't as moshy as I would have liked, but then Matt leaves, Mike Terry comes in, they become more of a metal band.
I think the Mike Terry record is their best record. I love that record.
What?
I love it. So
That's
catchy.
heresy. End this episode. That's heresy. I can't be hanging out with this
I
person.
love that record.
What? The
Yep.
self-titled?
I think that's their best record.
Okay. I'm kind of speechless here. Okay.
I don't be speechless. It's good.
But then this guy goes on. I mean, here we are talking about Jason Sukoff. He does Dystopia by Beneath the Massacre. He does Cataclysm. He does Dath's album in 2009. He does Job for a Cowboy in 2009. Yeah, man. So get a decent producer, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I can do this myself, but I want to get somebody with a different ear. But back to the task at hand, right? Is the Sounds of the Underground tour, Tim, the new wave of American heavy metal version of Ozfest?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, you also had a lot of like death metal bands on there as well sometimes. Like, well, not death metal, but you had like the start of like deathcore, like Red Chord, shit like that. But yeah, I would attribute to that. You also had that other big tour that used to go around. The Gigantor was big back then.
Oh yes.
You had what's that other one? Gets with an S. I forget. Midnight. You know that was later.
Yes, yeah.
That was later. Yeah, that was definitely later.
I'm looking up Sounds of the Underground lineups. So here we are in what year is this? 2007. Shadows Fall, Chimera, Job for a Cowboy, Darkest Hour, Acacia Strain,
Yeah.
who I always put way more in a hardcore vein. That's me personally. Goat Horror and Amon Amarth. Would you put them in that revival? No,
Nah.
they've done their own thing. Necro, Devil Wears Prada. But yeah, that's all big. And then you look at 2006, the year previous. Here we go, Tim. This is new wave American heavy metal. As LA Dying, In Flames, Trivium, Black Dahlia Murder, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall. On this one date, there was VOD, Anytown Concrete, Terror, Through the Eyes of the Dead. What would you put them in, Tim? Would you lump them in with these guys? Through the Eyes of the Dead? Deathcore.
Yeah. Deathcore.
2005. We're going backwards now. Lamb of God, Unearth, Slowpath, Norma Jean, Chimera, Throwdown, High on Fire, Strapping Young Lad, All That Remains, Devil Driver, A Life Once Lost, Throwdown.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was Ozfest doing their thing, and this was because I remember this is the year that I went in 2005, and I didn't go to Ozfest that year. I was like, this is way more my scene. Even though I totally stood my back to the stage and ordered food while On Earth played their entire set, and I still timed all the Ken Susi guitar throws perfectly. So what does that tell you?
I think he just left on Earth.
Did he?
I think so. I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
he's on the new record.
I kind of enjoyed the whole eat a dick on the back of the guitar that he when he flip his guitar up, whatever.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not on the new record.
But they were, I mean, this tour was the establishment of metal being a thing. What was the Sumerian? Ash of Ildson. He did a metal tour. What was it called?
Mm, I don't know. I don't remember him doing a tour.
There was
He's like
another.
a he's like a big like movie dude now. They did
Yeah.
like a series on Amazon and everything.
Well, his dad's is his dad John McTiernan?
Is it?
I think so. His dad was, I think it was John McTiernan.
Yeah, he did a series on Amazon about a metal band. It was actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I think it was the dude from Black Veil Brides that was like the lead guy in it or something, or one of
Uh,
them bands.
he was the son of the guy who directed John of Ildson. He directed Rocky, The
Oh,
Karate
okay.
Kid, Lean on Me. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
So big movies.
big movies. Yeah,
That's probably. I guess that's where he got his money from.
I,
Daddy.
but no, I don't think so because I vaguely remember an interview. It might have been with Doc Coyle where he talked about how his dad was basically his parents were either divorced or something. He was off doing his own thing, so he had a
Okay.
very he literally like built it himself. Wasn't he the original singer for the band Reflux?
Yeah, he was in Reflux. Yep.
That band was. I went back and listened to the newest Animals as Leaders
You
album.
like that?
Dude, I watched them live and I was dead sober and I kind of sat there with my jaw bouncing off the floor because I was completely amazed that Tosin just looks like he's off in his own world and the scary thing about that band is not just him. Javier that plays with him is just as good as him.
Yeah.
And then you got the drummer who's got his own chops. But back to whatever, we're getting way off topic here. So back
They're all like Berkeley kids.
yes, when smart people make heavy music, much like Meshuggah. But Meshuggah, would you lump them in with this, Tim?
No.
I
Personally, no.
I think they were on the They were on the periphery. Pardon the pun. They were on the periphery doing their own thing, and they definitely benefited from the mainstream acceptance of metal music. But I don't think they contributed at all. To me, they're like Converge, where they put out an album and everybody just goes, "Oh shit!" They got to go back and figure out. They got to go out back and figure out how do we go back to the drawing board now? Yeah.
Yeah. They put out Jane Doe, and everybody was like, "God damn it!
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you do that to me?"
And then they followed up with "You Fail Me," and everybody's like, "Wow, what?" Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't lump them in that regard
Mm-mm.
either. But yeah, another huge fucking band.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean,
So
Jane Doe was 2001, wasn't it?
I think no, it was later than that. I think I want to say it was like 2002.
Well, not that much later.
No,
I'm
you're
pretty
right. You're
sure.
right, Tim. You're right. 2001,
Yeah, I thought so.
September
I remember
2001.
I remember buying that fucking record
Dude,
still at Best Buy.
do you remember the booklet? It was a yellow jewel case, and the booklet was like an inch thick, and you couldn't get it back into the
Yeah.
CD case. So back to the new wave of American heavy metal stuff. There is I touched on this briefly, and I know this name may be kind of insulting, but we're going to go back and talk about it. At the same time, you have these bands rising. You also have what we now colloquially refer to as the butt rock stuff. So Breaking
Yeah.
Benjamin and Creed, and shout out to Rob Wharton, who's so excited that Creed may be doing another thing. And although I mean, even Chevelle kind of crossed over to that world, the rise of Disturbed, all that radio friendly rock. I mean, butt rock we probably should call it. It's a radio friendly rock.
Yeah. It's funny because like that stuff is all. I actually think most of that stuff's good for what it is. But I
It's
don't
yeah.
I see why it's stuck for so long, but I also see why now you don't really see much of it anymore. Because if you listen to rock radio, dude, it's all
Oh,
old
it's
shit.
terrible.
It's all old shit.
You're right. They don't go past like it's 2005
Yeah.
back to like maybe 98,
Yeah, I
maybe.
mean, you hear is Breaking Benjamin, Linkin Park, Metallica. That's all you hear. You don't hear anything new because everything new nowadays is just like lumped in with like, alternative, like Weezer and all that garbage. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. You put on any rock station and you will not hear anything new. I mean,
And
you'll hear like a single here and there of like a newer band, like Ghost and shit like that, but like you don't really hear they're sticking to the formula that works. And I mean, I don't blame them at all because if it gets people listening and it keeps your station relevant, it gives a fuck.
right. And so speaking of that point about going back and playing all old stuff, one of the lost era of music that we don't hear as much anymore, except if you have Sirius, is that late stage grunge stuff that was actually really radio friendly. So the stuff like your Candleboxes, your Collective Souls, your Toadies, all that rock type stuff, Gin Blossoms, where actually there were some pretty good songs. What was the other band? It began with an S, not Silverchair, who deserves being included.
Soul
Soul
Asylum.
Asylum.
Yeah.
That stuff isn't bad, but
Runaway
it's
train.
it's kind of been excuse me, forgotten about.
Fucking Runaway Train. That's a good song, actually.
Again, if you can write a hook, you can write a hook. You
You,
know?
you, you know what I also think? Like, if you go back to the 90s when like Biohazard or Machine Head and Pantera were putting out records, that was kind of like the rise of like your American heavy metal stuff. And then and then to me, it kind of feels like maybe in 2001, 2 is where you get more of that flavor. It's like more of the Roadrunner flavor came out and back.
Yes, that's a fair statement. Yep, I would agree.
That to me, because the first two Machine Head records are, if you listen to them and you think about it, if you listen to the first three, like let's see, let's say not the first Biohazard, but like 3, 2, 3, 4, them records, they're pretty much in that vein. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people lump them into hardcore, and I understand why, but they're not hardcore records.
No, no. I mean, they're arguably one of those bands who, while blazing their own trail, still deserves to be included in that crux.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're great records. I would love to talk to Evan or something like that. I think they're putting a new record out actually.
Yeah, I think they said that they in the last live show that they did, they said they were working on some stuff. So I guess what's his name finally came back from doing porn over in Europe, and dude, he's skinny as hell. Have you
Mhm.
seen how skinny he is? God bless him. Jesus, I wish I could get older and get skinnier. Instead I get older and get fatter. It's a
Who
crime.
who'd he go out with? Fucking
Tara Patrick,
Tara Patrick, that's right.
who is still phenomenally beautiful.
I haven't seen her in forever.
Yeah, she shows up on Instagram every once in a while. I think she lives in like Italy or something, but yeah, she's beautiful.
I could have swore he was with that chick Tegan Presley too.
She's a Philly girl,
Yeah, she lives in like Yardley or some shit like that.
and I swore when I used to work in the city, I swore I was walking past Rittenhouse and I saw this woman come jogging towards me, pushing a stroller, and I would bet $100 it was Gina Lynn. To the point where I stopped and I was like,
She
Rittenhouse
she
makes
used to
sense.
be on Kid Chris's show all the time in Philly when he was in Philly.
Yeah, so she probably is local.
Yeah, she probably is.
But anyway, changing the topic away from
Yeah.
late '90s porn stars. Um, but no, this was so. And if you look at some of the stuff that's coming up now, Tim, I would argue that this stuff was very, very influential. Like, so we've talked to a lot of bands who are proudly influenced by nu metal and have carried that sound forward. But I think you have a lot of metal bands now that probably will go back and say, yeah, when I was a kid, I found Stings of Conscience, or I found the
Oh
Oncoming
yeah.
Storm, and that was huge for me.
That absolutely, man. I mean, there's a shitload of people that would probably lump in, because you got to imagine, you got to remember too. A lot of these kids are in these bands are like fucking 18 years old, dude.
Yeah.
That's what's even crazier, dude.
To think about that, like now bands that are 18, 19, they've usually done a demo or two. They've got at least some production chops or someone helping them that's got some chops. YouTube can teach you a lot of shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, whatever. I guess we can talk about this at another time. I think this one's ran its course.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would challenge or ask our audience that's of the younger persuasion. Go back and check out some of these bands that were big in that area. I mean, maybe you like Trivium, right? If you like the stuff that has a lot of guitar solos with really intricate guitar work, check out Trivium. If you like some of the really aggressive type stuff, go back to the early Lamb of God, which is quite different. That first Burn the Priest album and then New American Gospel, quite different than what they're doing now.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. There's a lot
Um,
of people that don't even know about them records. Like they put them on, like they're like, "Whoa, this is Lamb." Yeah,
yeah, no shit, right? Have you ever gone back and listened to that Burn the Priest stuff? There's some
I love
gems
that
there,
record.
dude. There's some gems.
What's that song called? Bloodletting.
Bloodletting. Yep.
Great
Which they
song.
played live for like a decade and then they finally stopped and then they brought it back, I think.
Yeah, they came around and did a Burn the Priest tour,
Which
like
is
2015 maybe, because
why
they
did I miss
re-released
that?
it. Yeah, they re-released it, and then they did like I don't know if it was a tour, but I know they did some sets of that stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, not to say that all bands should do a nostalgia set or a nostalgia tour, but there's some really big influential stuff that I think that bands um would be stupid, would not be dumb, I should say, for saying, hey, we should just tour this album to the big cities. I mean, look at what Finch is doing with What It Is to Burn. I'm still pissed and heartbroken that we never got that Poison the Well reunion set. um oh, why can't they play This Is Hardcore? But whatever. But yeah, go back and check out, to all our listeners, go back and check out some of this, the metal that came out of 2000, say 2004 through 2006, and you're going to find a lot of stuff that you listen to today. You can find the genetic descendants back from those bands.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right, so uh New Breed _ podcast, Apple, Twitter, and Instagram, newbreedpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on r/numetal. Come in, give us some feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Do you agree, disagree? Were you yelling at the head unit at any time? Is there a band from this era that you want us to deep dive on? Come into the comments and let us know. And until next time, this is a New Breed podcast saying cheers.
Later.